was the girl's first day at college. She told the bodyguard behind her, "Don't talk to your classmates as much as possible. She's happy in her dormitory. It's obvious that the school is taking good care of her." Only her dormitory was made of bulletproof glass, to make herself less conspicuous. The next day she wore a shirt to class, to face the whispers of her classmates. This Annie was a little upset, but the boy behind her helped to distract her. And so it was. Annie noticed the boy. After class, she went after him to thank him. At the welcome party, they met again. They ran up the steps together, and then they played again. And that was it. Annie, who had never been in love before, was completely smitten. Annie's father was the president. She was the first daughter of the president. She's been watched by many eyes, but when she finally got to college, her father drove her to college in a motorcade. He even assigned her bodyguards, and these bodyguards are very nervous. A classmate just grabbed a water pistol. The bodyguards directly pressed her to the ground. The story spread all over the campus, so no one dared to make friends with her. Annie thought Carl was the exception, but he was actually one of the top agents her father hired, whether it was helping out in class, or a chance encounter at orientation, to be best friends with Annie. But Annie already had her heart set on him. A few days later, Annie was in the media for accidentally pulling down her classmate's pants. She was in the hot seat. They asked her how she felt about it. Annie had to go into hiding, and then she ran into Carl in the duty room. Carl took off his jacket and asked Annie to change. She was so covered up that the reporters didn't recognize her. The reporters didn't recognize her. Annie ate her first street food. I don't know if it was because Carl was across the street. She found it very tasty. The grandmother thought Carl was Annie's boyfriend. Annie laughed and denied it, but in her heart, she was delighted. But now they were walking like a couple. As they were getting more and more intimate, the annoying paparazzi appeared. The two of them kept walking down the street. They entered a movie theater. Annie was very excited. After the movie, they went back to the duty room to talk, for the first time in her life, and had revealed her feelings. She wanted to tell Carl everything. Listening to Annie talk about all these years of misery, Carl was a little saddened. So in order to make Annie happier, he began to help Annie skip classes every day together. Carl also developed subtle feelings for Annie, but he didn't confess his feelings, because he knew Annie was too special. But Annie was fed up with it, so she kissed her, and that's how they confirmed their relationship. Soon after, Annie took them to her parents, but Annie didn't tell them that Carl was her boyfriend. She just wanted them to get to know each other. But Carl came to his senses, because if the president found out, that the president would be furious. And just as Carl was about to come clean, Annie asked him to dance with her, and reassured Carl that he shouldn't be afraid. Even though Carl was just a college student, Annie wanted to be with him. The president's daughter was attacked by an assailant, but she wasn't afraid at all. She was just being pulled along by the man she loved. But as soon as she got into the car, her smile disappeared. The clever Anne understood everything at once. When she got home, she couldn't help but ask her father why he did this to her. For her father, then living, love didn't seem so important. So from that day on, she started to meet all kinds of men. She went to bars and started talking to men. She was trying to make Carl jealous, and it actually worked. A man said something disrespectful to Annie. Carl punched him in the face and knocked him to the ground, and forced him to leave with Annie on his shoulders. And the whole way there, Annie went on a tirade. She asked him why he was creating these encounters. Carl felt so guilty listening to him, so he planted a kiss on Annie's forehead, and he knew that if he stayed with Annie, he'd be in deeper and deeper trouble. He resigned. A few days later, Annie saw a familiar figure. She rushed to call Carl's name, but when she turned around, it was someone else. From then on, Annie felt like the world had lost its color, but at the same time, her personality was changing dramatically. She was no longer the good girl she'd always been. She began to say no to her father. Her father was surprised, but also pleasantly surprised, because that's the kind of daughter she wanted. But the father was also thinking, is it too cruel to separate her from her beloved? He was hesitant. At a party, the father asked Annie to dance with him, and while Annie was having fun, he began to back away. And at the same time, Carl appeared in Annie's sights. With her father's support and blessing, they lived happily ever after.